Hi, and welcome to Tabletop Tip of the Day. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. I am replying to a video that RPG Elite has put up. It's he's got two out on a series about race and representation and the harm that those things can do, and the and the pitfalls that lie therein. And I think this dialogue is important. So if this triggers you or you don't want to hear me talk about race, that's fine. Go turn this off and go somewhere else. But I think this is an important discussion to have. And I want to thank RPG Elite for bringing this discussion out into the public sphere. There's one other guy I follow, but he does more pop culture things than RPGs, and RPG Elite really specifically targets tabletop role playing games, and that's what I'm interested in. And so give him some love. Go check out his videos. I'll have a link to his stuff down below. So getting into the meat of it, oof, there are lines here that are for me so blurry. I just don't know where the line is. I'm a white artist. My artwork is in the Spycraft book behind RPG Elite in this very first episode of the series. I'm married to a Puerto Rican. My gaming group is totally white and has been for years. That's just organically what happened over the years. I grew up in rural upstate New York, which is majority white. I look in a mirror, I see a white guy. White guys in action fiction have always sparked me since I was 6 years old and could read. So, and who are those guys? That's Tarzan, that's Conan, it's Elric. Elric is so freaking white. He's actually alabaster. Prince Valiant, Fafhrd and the Gray Mouser, all these guys are depicted as white guys, white dudes, and that list went on to influence a wee little game called Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, back in the mid 70s, which I've been playing since 1977. So all white dudes everywhere in my life. If you like Tabletop Tip of the Day, please consider subscribing. Please hit that like button. All that stuff helps me out quite a bit. And I'll get back onto the show. Bye. When I'm left to my own devices, I doodle white dudes. That's what I'm sketching away in my sketchbook. That's what comes naturally to me. But I like to push outside of my comfort zone, so I've made a real attempt to draw more people of color, whether they're indigenous, native, First Nations, African, Asian, what have you. I really try to mix and match new clothes and patterns. And this is no easy task. How to paint myriad skin colors. There's such a range. I mean, it's ridiculous. In my current job I'm doing for Artelisorian and for Cyberpunk, we actually have a skin chart that goes from super light, like redhead, pale sheet white with freckles, all the way to the darkest Nubian skin tone you can possibly imagine. And I am told, like, hey, this person is a certain level, and that's cool, but it's also not easy. It's not easy to know how to mix paint and get it to the skin colors that you're trying to depict, accurately. Because I just don't want to put like a dark skin color on some face and have it read as like, oh, that's a Caucasian with a dark skin color. That's almost the equivalent of blackface. I don't want to do that. I want that person to have ethnicity and be grounded in some reality, even though it's a fantastical world, right? Um, so I don't want to draw white dudes all the time. It is fun for me to tackle all kinds of ethnicities. I'm culturally appropriating. Yeah, I am. I think RPGs culturally appropriate all the time. That's sort of the weft and the woof of the hobby. Is it okay? Yeah, I think it is because I don't think there's an agenda behind that. I don't think I'm doing it or people do that with some kind of like we want to keep down this ethnicity, we want to push that ethnicity aside. But I also think that I do have an agenda, and this is what RPG Elite was really warning against: is not to have an agenda when it comes to this thing. And my agenda is I'm really tired, bog tired of Celtic and Viking iconography in art on tabletop role playing games. And it's like because we have been in that gray and brown palette, that depiction of the early Middle Ages as the template for Dungeons and Dragons and other things for so long. And I think that really got shook up by the element of anime. He was talking about anime and his thing. Record of the Lodoss War. All of a sudden everything was colors, and there was a lot more oriental kind of accoutrement kind of happening in the patterning and stuff like that. And so you got to have a little bit of a mix and match. And I like that. I think it's fun to say, hey, can I look at how a Naru jacket could be worn by a member of royalty, And so I'll go and I'll look up Naru jackets and I'll look at their patterning and stuff like that, because that's stuff that I'm not aware of, and that's how I get to learn and get to expand my repertoire of imagery. So I think it's important to do that. I mean, I think it's no different than musicians. Last year I was driving down to DC. This article came up on on PR. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but bear with me. And it lasted for an entire hour, and we were stuck in traffic around the Beltway, so it was great. And I can't remember the show, but it was brilliant, and I wish I knew it. But it was about the definition of Latin music. That was what the show was about. They had these three Latin music experts on. A couple of them were academics, and they played all kinds of music from all over the world. Some from Spain, some all across South America, some from Philippines. They asked the question: is Latin music, is it still Latin music if a white non-Spanish speaking person writes and plays it? And they were like, if it sounds like it must be. They couldn't answer it, and no one could really nail down a nifty, clean definition of what Latin music is. Latin music just is. It's just its own thing, and it's a mishmash of genres. It's the samba and the merengue and the bachata, and it's all these different influences. From the Caribbean, from Africa, from South America. It's just this literally melting pot, right? And I thought, after listening to that, isn't that freaking cool? Isn't it great that there's all these permutations and constant absorptions of other musical stylings, that there is so much nuance to Latin music? And, my wife and I just looked at each other and started talking for 30 minutes after that show. And, isn't that a great part of art in general, to get us talking and to, you know, talk about how she connected to Latin music growing up and hearing Tito Puentes and what that did for her and for her father, and it was cool. I mean, you had to be there, and I'm just sort of going on and on and on. So I do feel the need to push back slightly on the idea of representation should not matter, which is sort of the main point of RPG Elite. Um, and maybe it is to be looking for such representation in order to validate who you are, and he gets into that, but it doesn't take away, my opinion, that pictures have power, that they have a force, they are a persuasive argument. I have changed a way a person has played their character because I have drawn that character. No lie. I've seen that happen more than once. My dog's going nuts. I came up with some nuance, some body language, some equipment, something about my interpretation of their character, which is a bit of a buffer and gives me, a little bit of distance from their character, allows me to maybe see something that they don't, right? There was once this really kind of jokey, weak ass character with no depth named Chango in our Champions game. And he was kind of based on a video game character, and it just, there was no depth to him. And I was like, I just, we'd ask him questions, and the player just didn't have that hook into that character. So when I drew him as this badass, summoning a ball of lightning, and it changed the way the player played that character. I saw it immediately. So pictures have power, and there are agendas out there, and there's this propaganda that uses pictures, and we have a long history of that, right? And so it takes me to another discussion about inclusion and representation. I knew Dwayne McDuffie at NYU when we both went there. Dwayne was didn't know me. We weren't really good friends or anything. Didn't know each other really well, but we ran into each other at a small convention in Michigan many years later. And I spent the entire weekend with him just shooting the breeze. And Dwayne McDuffie, for those who don't know, is the creator of Static Shock. He was the driving force behind Milestone Comics. He was the editor in chief behind Justice League and Justice League International cartoon shows. He did Damage Control. He was a brilliant man. I mean, I had so much fun with him. Just talking about stuff and listening to his stories. But one of the stories he told about Justice League really stuck with me, and that was they were going to Justice League International, and they wanted a large, diverse, ethnically, global group, right? And so the mandates was let's find an Asian male who doesn't use martial arts but has some other superpower, and they could not find a single one. Think about that. I mean, at this point, DC Comics has been around for 60, 70 years, and you cannot find one Asian character who isn't a caricature or doesn't use martial arts. That's sad. That I know there are some now. I know there's a Chinese Superman, finally. Um, and they ended up having to use Dr. Light, who was Japanese female, because they couldn't find a male. And whether whether no matter what side of the fence you come down on whether do we need to find an Asian male and stick him into Justice League International or don't we, I don't think that is as important of a question as was why don't we have someone that we could use, and there's a let's do that, let's create somebody, and which they went on to do. But so coming full circle, I guess when I sit down to draw, whether it's for a publisher or if it's for my own game or for my own yucks, I do try to ask myself, does this character need to be another white dude? Sometimes it does. Sometimes I'm drawing Conan. Conan's a white dude. There's no way around it. He's from the north. He's a Sumerian. And he's a product of his time. We get into all the, all the bad cultures are dark. That that sucks, and I don't think that should be the case. But I really do try to find both different sexes and different ethnicities to be portraying in my artwork, even though I'm a white dude. And am I pandering? I don't know. I hope not. Am I exploring? Absolutely. That's what I prefer to think, that I'm exploring. And I hope, you all want to explore too. So, anyways, so this is an issue that is, beyond just me and my response to it. I think everybody should be tackling this. I think everybody should be struggling with this: black, white, red, yellow, green. I don't care who you are. Um, I think these are important conversations to have. And, if I can get something from this that someone can educate me on and point me to a better path, a better direction, I'm all ears. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to continue this dialogue. So yeah, that's what I think about that. So thank you. Those are my thoughts. This was a long one. Keep on keeping on. Thank you.